The bell had barely stopped echoing when he saw them, two little girls sitting alone on a cold concrete bench clutching glittery lunchboxes that caught the Brooklyn sunlight like tiny disco balls. Around them, laughter filled the schoolyard, sneakers squeaked against pavement, and the smell of peanut butter sandwiches drifted from every corner. But the twins didn't move. They didn't eat. They just sat there silent, as if the noise of the world didn't belong to them. When the young man finally asked, "Why aren't you eating?" they opened their lunchboxes. Empty. Completely empty. And that single moment broke something inside him. That morning had started like any other for Miles Harrington, a 26-year-old billionaire who hid his wealth the way most people hide their mistakes. He drove an old Corolla instead of his Aston Martin, wore jeans instead of designer suits, and spent his mornings in neighborhoods where nobody knew his name. His late mother had raised him on one rule: money means nothing until it feeds someone else's hunger. That lesson echoed louder since her passing, and it was the reason he stood outside Prospect Park's PS 142 instead of a boardroom overlooking Manhattan. He'd arranged a quiet visit with the principal under the pretense of exploring community partnerships. What he really wanted was truth, not data. He wanted to see what hunger looked like when it had pigtails and a backpack. The school corridors told him plenty cracked paint, faded posters about kindness, the faint smell of old cafeteria food. Teachers looked like marathoners halfway through a race with no finish line. He admired them. But it wasn't until recess that he saw the face of everything wrong and everything right with the world. The courtyard buzzed with motion. Kids traded cookies and gossip, tossed rubber balls, called each other names that meant love. And then, at the far edge near a chain-link fence, those two little girls, mirror images, sat quietly. Their uniforms were clean, but worn sleeves rolled to hide the fact they were borrowed from another child. Their names, he'd later learn, were Noa and Nia, 6 years old, twins. He noticed how they kept their heads together as they whispered, trying to make invisibility their armor. Miles approached carefully. He didn't want to scare them, just to understand. "Hi there," he said with a smile that carried warmth instead of pity. "Beautiful day, huh?" Both looked up. Nia's eyes were cautious, Noah's curious. They nodded but said nothing. "It's lunchtime, right?" he asked softly. "How come you're not eating?" The girls shared a glance, a full conversation in a single heartbeat, and slowly unlatched their lunchboxes. Inside was nothing. Not even a crumb. Just clean, empty space where food should have been. The sight hit Miles harder than any boardroom betrayal, harder than losing his mother. Because those boxes weren't empty by accident, they were armor. "We bring them so no one knows," Nia said quietly. "If you have a lunchbox, nobody asks." The words slid under his skin like a blade. "Does your mom know?" he asked gently. "She knows," Noa whispered. "She just doesn't have anything right now. She says tomorrow will be better." Miles nodded, not trusting his voice. They weren't ashamed, they weren't begging, they were surviving. And that hurt more than tears would have. He turned away before the emotion betrayed him, eyes burning, throat tight. The noise of the playground blurred into a distant hum. Behind him, the twins began tapping the lids of their empty boxes, creating a little rhythm. Two brave hearts drumming against silence. He bit his lip hard enough to taste blood. He had grown up in penthouses and prep schools. Yet, right here in a Brooklyn schoolyard, he felt poorer than he ever had. "Everything okay?" a voice asked behind him. It was Mrs. Kim, the playground teacher, sharp-eyed but kind. Her glance flicked from him to the girls. Miles tried to steady his breathing. "They're okay," he said quietly, "but something here isn't." Mrs. Kim crouched beside the twins, her tone practical. "Girls, do you want something from the office pantry?" Two little heads shook. pride again, the kind that makes you stronger and hungrier at the same time. When the recess bell rang, Miles walked toward the gate, his steps slow and heavy. Principal O'Leary met him halfway, gray suit, worried eyes. "Mr. Harrington, I'm told you asked to observe. Everything all right?" Miles nodded, but didn't smile. "I saw 2 children pretending not to be hungry. That's not all right." The principal sighed, the kind of sigh that carried years of budget meetings and broken promises. "We do what we can," he said. "It's never enough." Miles looked back one last time. The twins were holding hands walking toward the building, their lunchboxes swinging like small hollow pendulums. The sunlight glinted off the plastic, bright and cruel. He wanted to run after them, fix it all right there, but good intentions without respect were just vanity. So he swallowed the ache and said, "I'll come back tomorrow. I think I can help." Back in his car, he sat for a long time before starting the engine. The old Corolla's dashboard was cracked, a relic of humility he'd forced upon himself. In the passenger seat sat a grocery bag filled with snacks he'd bought on impulse that morning. Apples, granola bars, milk cartons. He could have handed it over, but that would have been about easing his guilt, not their hunger. What those girls needed wasn't charity. They needed dignity, structure, hope that lasted longer than a sandwich. He pressed the ignition, the radio flickering to life with an old Bruce Springsteen tune about small-town dreams. The words blurred as his eyes watered again. He whispered into the empty car, "Tomorrow, Noa. Tomorrow, Nia. I'll be there." And somewhere deep down, he knew that this simple promise born out of 2 empty lunchboxes was about to change. Not just their lives, but his own in ways he couldn't imagine yet. The next morning, the city woke in gray light and drizzle. Miles Harrington parked his battered Corolla again in front of PS 142, coffee in hand, trying to quiet the restless energy pulsing under his skin. He'd barely slept. The image of those 2 empty lunchboxes had followed him through every hour of the night, whispering questions he couldn't ignore. When he stepped through the front doors of the school, the scent of wet coats and pencil shavings filled the hall, ordinary, human, and grounding. Principal O'Leary was waiting for him outside the office, tie a little crooked expression unreadable. "Mr. Harrington," he said, offering a firm handshake. "You mentioned yesterday that you wanted to help." His tone was polite, but guarded the tone of a man who's seen good intentions come and go without much staying power. "I do," Miles said, "but I want to do it right, within your rules." O'Leary gestured toward a small conference room with mismatched chairs and a coffee pot that had seen better years. Mrs. Kim joined them a few minutes later, her hair still damp from the rain, carrying a clipboard stacked with attendance sheets. The 3 sat down, the hum of the fluorescent light above them filling the pauses. Miles explained what he'd witnessed, his voice steady but low. He described the girls Noa and Nia Reyes and the quiet way they'd hidden their hunger. He didn't mention his wealth or last name beyond what was on his visitor badge. He spoke as a neighbor, not as a man whose name appeared on Forbes lists. When he finished, the principal sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Harrington, we see this more often than you might think," O'Leary said. "A lot of families here are 1 paycheck away from skipping meals. We have a pantry, some community partners, but resources are thin. And rules, well, they're thicker than molasses." Mrs. Kim nodded. "We can't just accept outside help without clearance. Every donation, every program has to go through the district." Miles leaned forward. "What if I don't donate food? What if I build something sustainable with you, not around you? A breakfast table open to any child who wants it. Simple, nutritious meals, no stigma, no forms, just food." The room went quiet. Mrs. Kim's expression softened. "You'd have to work through a registered nonprofit. The district's policy requires oversight." "I know someone," Miles said. "Maria Delgado." She runs a community foundation in Brooklyn Heights, Transparent Compliant Clean Books. She could act as fiscal sponsor. I fund it anonymously. The principal folded his arms, studying him. Anonymously? Huh? Most folks like their name on a plaque. Miles smiled faintly. I've seen too many plaques and not enough people helped. I don't need another one. Mrs. Kim looked at O'Leary. If we pilot it for breakfast only before official school hours, it might bypass red tape. O'Leary tapped the table. You cover food costs. We handle logistics supervision cleanup. 1-month trial. He gave Miles a long, testing look. You sure you want to do this? It's not as simple as writing a check. Kids come with stories, and those stories don't end at breakfast. Miles met his eyes. That's exactly why I'm here. The deal, if it could be called that, was struck with a handshake and a cautious hope. But outside the school walls, things were already shifting. By noon, Miles's phone buzzed. It was a message from his assistant Dana. The board saw photos. Someone at the school recognized you. They're asking questions. He hadn't expected it so soon. Apparently, a parent's social media post had captured him near the playground yesterday. The caption read, "Looks like Billionaire Miles Harrington touring public schools, philanthropy project, or PR stunt." He stared at the screen, jaw tight. The last thing he wanted was for those twins or anyone in that community to feel like props in a publicity act. He called Dana, tell the PR team to say nothing. This isn't a campaign. If they press, tell them it's private volunteer work. You're sure that's smart? She asked. People will fill the silence with their own stories. Let them, he said. I'd rather be misunderstood than make those kids a headline. That evening, he drove through the rain to Maria Delgado's office in Brooklyn Heights. The foundation occupied 2 rooms above a laundromat. Maria greeted him with a hug that didn't care about titles or money. Miles, I haven't seen you since the community garden project. What's going on? He explained the situation quickly. When he finished, she didn't hesitate. We can set up a pilot fund under our food security initiative. We'll call it the Morning Table Program. You'll remain anonymous. I'll handle paperwork and oversight. But Miles, are you sure you're ready for this level of involvement? Ready or not? He said those girls are already in my head. Maria nodded. Then let's make it happen. They spent the next 2 hours drafting logistics supplier options, storage space staffing. She recommended partnering with a local caterer who already serviced other schools. Everything needed to be compliant, traceable, ethical. Miles insisted on one rule: no photographs of the children, no personal data shared. Dignity first. Always. When he finally stepped out into the wet night, he checked his phone again. Another message from Dana blinked on the screen. The press is speculating this is tied to your company's education initiative. Should we deny it? He typed back, no. Let it fade. The work will speak louder later. Back in his apartment overlooking the East River, he stood by the window watching the reflection of city lights shimmer on the black water. He thought about Noa and Nia. He thought about his mother who'd once handed a stranger a bag of groceries and said help quietly. That's how love sounds. He dialed Maria again. Add one more clause to the plan, he said. Every breakfast has to include a note from the school, something kind words the kids can take with them into the day. Let's feed the heart, too. The next morning, he woke before dawn. The drizzle had cleared, and the skyline glowed pale orange. A new folder sat on his desk, permit supplier contract safety forms. Bureaucracy, yes, but also possibility. The doorway was opening, one rule, one risk at a time. As he left for the school, his reflection in the elevator mirror looked different, calmer, anchored. He wasn't the billionaire today. He was a man carrying a promise. Outside, the city was just beginning to stir. The sidewalks shimmered with puddles the world smelled of wet asphalt and coffee. And somewhere across Brooklyn, two little girls were waking up to another school day, still unaware that tomorrow had already started changing because one man had chosen not to look away. The air on Sterling Place smelled faintly of rain and bread from the corner bakery. Miles Harrington stood outside a narrow brick apartment, a grocery bag balanced in one hand, his breath rising in quiet clouds. He'd asked Principal O'Leary for permission before coming. Everything had been cleared, the visit, the groceries, the purpose. Nothing impulsive this time. Still, he felt that same nervousness he used to get before his first big deal, only now it wasn't money on the line. It was dignity. The door opened a few inches, a chain still hooked. "Yes," a woman's voice said, cautious but polite. Elena Reyes Miles asked softly, "I'm from the school. Mrs. Kim mentioned I might stop by with some things for Noa and Nia." There was a pause. Then the chain slid back and the door opened fully. Elena was younger than he expected, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes that didn't dim her grace. Behind her, the apartment was small but spotless, everything neatly arranged as if order could hold chaos at bay. "You really didn't have to do this," she said, motioning him in. "The girls already told me you talked to them." "I know," Miles said, setting the bag on a counter that had seen better days. "But I thought maybe we could talk about something more steady than one bag of groceries." Her posture stiffened slightly. "We're fine. Just a slow month. Things will pick up." "I understand," he said. And he did. He'd seen that same look on his mother's face when pride fought against need. "This isn't charity, Mrs. Reyes. It's partnership. The school's starting a breakfast program. I'm helping set it up. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the girls participating." She studied him, searching for the catch. "No cameras, no one writing articles, no cameras," he said firmly. "No names, no attention, just food. Quiet help." Her shoulders eased. "Then yes," she said quietly. "That would help a lot." The twins came running from the next room, still in their socks. "Mr. Miles." Nia beamed, holding a crayon-stained notebook. "We made a menu for tomorrow's breakfast." He laughed, crouching to her level. "You did?" Noa nodded eagerly. "We wrote it down, apple slices, toast, and something hot. Mommy says warm food makes you feel full longer." "That's smart," Miles said. "Maybe oatmeal. We can make that happen." The girls smiled at each other, a private victory passing between them. When they dashed off again, he caught Elena watching with a mix of relief and worry. "They don't understand," she said softly. "They think things will just get better. But rent's gone up again and I've lost hours at the hotel. I might have to pull them out of this school if I can't pay next month." "How much time do you have?" he asked. 5 days before the late notice becomes eviction." She said it plainly without drama, as if she'd already made peace with losing. Miles exhaled. 5 days, he repeated. Okay. He didn't promise anything. He'd learned promises meant nothing without systems behind them. But in his mind, wheels were already turning. They sat for a while, as rain began again outside. He asked questions not to pry, but to understand her work hours, her commute, her support network. She answered with quiet honesty, the kind that didn't look for sympathy. Finally, he said, "Would you be open to a job closer to home? Something reliable, steady hours, better pay?" Elena looked skeptical. "There aren't many options for someone like me. Someone like you," he repeated. "Single mom, no degree, limited childcare. Employers don't exactly line up." Miles smiled faintly. Maybe they will this time. Before she could ask what he meant, a small framed photo on a bookshelf caught his eye. It showed a gray-haired man in glasses standing with a classroom of kids. There was handwriting on the bottom. "To Mrs. Reyes, your mother changed my life." "Bennett," Miles froze. Wait, your mother was Maria Reyes. She taught at St. Anthony's Elementary. Elena's eyes widened. You knew her. He nodded slowly, something dawning on his face. She was my teacher, 4th grade. She believed in me when no one else did. Elena smiled faintly. She talked about her students all the time. She'd be proud to know one of them turned out to help others. He didn't know what to say. For a moment, he was just a boy again, sitting in a wooden desk while Mrs. Reyes told him that kindness wasn't a weakness. He looked around the little apartment, the patched sofa, the stack of library books, the drawing of 2 stick figures labeled Mom plus Us. This wasn't just another story about poverty. This was a circle closing. When he finally stood to leave, Elena followed him to the door. "I'm grateful," she said, voice steady, "not just for the food, for not making it a spectacle." He nodded. "You deserve respect, not pity. People forget that. I won't," he said. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean sharp, almost new. He texted Maria Delgado as he walked toward his car, "Need a job placement at Riverstone Event Catering. One candidate, skilled, reliable references to follow." Then another message. "Set up grocery deliveries twice a week for Reyes family." Quietly. He climbed into the car, sat for a moment and looked back at the building. Through the window, he could see Noa and Nia holding up their handwritten menu, proudly showing it to their mother. The light from their small kitchen spilled onto the sidewalk, warm against the gray. As he drove away, Miles thought of Mrs. Reyes, the teacher who had once told him, "Every good thing you build becomes part of someone else's shelter." Now, he finally understood what she meant, and maybe, just maybe, this was the first brick. By late October, the first leaves were falling across Brooklyn, crunching under hurried steps and schoolyard laughter. What began as a quiet breakfast idea had turned into something bigger, something alive. Every morning before the first bell, the cafeteria at PS 142 glowed with the smell of cinnamon oatmeal, warm toast, and laughter that didn't sound like hunger anymore. Children lined up not to hide their needs, but to share a meal together. And at the center of it all, always standing back, but never far away, was Miles Harrington. He'd kept his promise to remain anonymous. The morning table program bore no trace of his name. To the school, he was just the guy who showed up early to help the staff unload boxes. To the twins, he was simply Mr. Miles, the man who asked about their favorite books and remembered their birthdays. But the change he'd set in motion was spreading faster than anyone expected. One morning, Mrs. Kim found him stacking trays in the cafeteria. "You know," she said, handing him a towel, "since this started, attendance is up. Kids who used to miss class because they were embarrassed about breakfast, they're here every day now. Even the teachers are talking about the difference." She smiled, lowering her voice. "You did this quietly, Miles. That's rare." He smiled back but didn't answer. He didn't want praise, he wanted permanence. He wanted to build something that would outlast the moment, outlast him. That same afternoon, he met with Maria Delgado in her small Brooklyn Heights office to review the program's reports. "You're not just feeding kids," Maria said, tapping her pen against a spreadsheet. "You're stabilizing families. We've had parents volunteering to help. Donations are coming in. The city's Department of Education noticed they want to meet." Miles leaned back, thoughtful. "I didn't plan for it to go that far this fast." Maria gave him a knowing look. "Good ideas don't ask permission to grow." He chuckled softly. "Then, I guess we'd better be ready for the next wave." That night, as he drove down Sterling Place, the neighborhood seemed different. Brighter, as if possibility had taken root in the cracks of its sidewalks. He parked in front of the Reyes apartment, holding a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside were art supplies, a gift for Noa and Nia, who had taken to drawing breakfast menus for the program each week. The girls had become small celebrities at school, not because of who helped them, but because of how they helped others. They'd made it their job to greet every new child at the morning table with a smile and a plate. When Elena opened the door, her face lit up with energy he hadn't seen before. "You won't believe this," she said, motioning him inside. "Riverstone offered me a full-time position with benefits. Maria told them you'd recommended me." Miles grinned. "You earned it, Elena. I just made the introduction." The twins appeared, hands covered in glitter and glue. "We're making decorations for the school Thanksgiving breakfast," Nia announced proudly. "Mrs. Kim said we could help set the tables. They asked if we wanted to read the morning poem, too," Noa added. "Mom's helping us practice." Miles laughed softly. "I hope you're not putting me out of a job." Elena shook her head, eyes shining. "They're learning what giving feels like. That's worth more than anything I could buy them." As they talked, the smell of simmering soup filled the apartment, the kind of homemade warmth money couldn't manufacture. It struck Miles how much had changed since that first day, how this little home, once quiet and dim, now pulsed with light color and hope. On the refrigerator, he noticed a new drawing pinned beside the girls' art, a large table surrounded by people with the words, "Everyone eats here," scrawled across the top. That night, driving back across the Manhattan Bridge, he thought about those words. Everyone eats here. It wasn't just about food, it was about belonging, about the invisible lines that separated people and how easy it was to erase them, if someone cared enough to try. The following week, the meeting with the city officials took place. They gathered in a modest conference room downtown, two representatives from the Department of Education, Maria and Miles, introduced simply as a consultant. The officials had questions about logistics, funding, safety. But when Maria presented the attendance data and feedback from parents, the tone shifted. "This could be a model," one of them said. "Replicated in other boroughs, we might see district-wide improvement." Miles stayed quiet, listening. But inside a thought stirred. This wasn't just a pilot anymore, it was a movement. When the meeting ended, Maria turned to him. "They'll want to expand. You okay with that?" He nodded slowly. "As long as the rules stay the same, no publicity, no branding, just community." Outside, the wind was cold, but he felt strangely light. He remembered his mother's words again, the ones that used to sound like a sermon, and now felt like prophecy. "If you can't fix everything, fix something near you." He had started with 2 little girls and an empty lunchbox. Now hundreds of children began their day with a full stomach and a little more confidence. The ripple had become a current. That Friday, he returned to C-142 for the Thanksgiving breakfast. The cafeteria glowed with paper turkeys and garlands made by the students. Noa and Nia stood on the small stage reading their poem in unison, voices trembling at first, then gaining strength. "We share the food we share. The day, kindness makes the hunger fade away." The applause was loud, but the moment that hit Miles hardest was quieter. The one when Elena looked across the room and caught his gaze, nodding with silent gratitude. No spotlight, no speeches. Just 2 people who understood that small kindnesses multiplied could change a world. After the event, Miles stepped outside the city's chill, brushing against his face. The sun was low golden light spilling over the school's brick walls. He thought of the first day he saw the twins sitting alone of the empty lunchboxes that had broken his heart, and realized they weren't empty anymore. They were full of something invisible, but powerful proof that one good act can outlive the person who started it. By the time spring returned to Brooklyn, the world around S-142 had changed in quiet, unmistakable ways. The once cracked playground now buzzed with color murals painted by the students lined the walls. Garden boxes filled with herbs and tomatoes bordered the yard, and laughter carried through the air like a melody that refused to fade. The morning table program had become a fixture, no longer a novelty, but a ritual. It was the sound of community beginning again every day at dawn. For Miles Harrington, the past year had been a slow revelation. He'd started with a question and ended with a purpose. The meetings, the spreadsheets, the coordination, all of it had mattered, but it was the small moments that stayed with him, the way a child's face lit up over a warm meal, the gratitude in a parent's quiet nod, the way people began to look each other in the eye again. He had spent most of his life building wealth. Now, for the first time, he was building meaning. That morning, he stood outside the school gate, his usual spot under the elm tree. The twins spotted him instantly, as they always did, running toward him with twin braids, bouncing, and smiles wide enough to erase the past. Mr. Miles Noa shouted, waving something bright in her hand. "We made something for you." Nia caught up, clutching a folder almost too big for her. "It's a surprise," she said, giggling. He knelt down as they handed him a large envelope covered in colorful doodles. Stars, heart stick figures holding hands. "Should I open it now?" he asked. "Yes," they said together. Inside was a drawing, vivid and childlike, but detailed enough to stop him cold. It showed the cafeteria filled with children around long tables, food on every plate, laughter spilling across the page. In the corner stood a man in a blue shirt surrounded by sunlight that stretched across the room. Above it, written in crooked block letters, were the words, "A full heart starts with a full table." He felt something shift in his chest, that familiar tightness that came when gratitude was too large to fit inside him. "This," he said softly, "is beautiful. Thank you." Noa tilted her head. Mom helped with the letters. "We made it for the anniversary of the breakfast program." "It's been a whole year," Nia added. "Mrs. Kim said they're hanging our picture in the hallway. Everyone can see it when they come in." He smiled, folding the drawing carefully. "I think it's the best thing I've ever been given." Elena appeared at the doorway, waving. She looked different these days, stronger, lighter, her uniform crisp from her job at Riverstone, her face no longer shadowed by exhaustion. "They insisted on showing you first," she said. He held up the drawing. "I'm honored. They've been working on it for weeks." She said, her voice softer now. "They said it had to be perfect because it's for the man who made mornings happy again." He chuckled, shaking his head. "They're the ones who did that." "No," Elena said, looking him in the eye. "You started it, and it didn't stop here. The clinic where I go for checkups now serves breakfast, too. They said the idea came from PS 142. That's you, Miles." He didn't respond right away. The ripple had become a wave, touching lives he'd never see. That afternoon, Maria Delgado called. "You should come by the foundation," she said. "There's something you need to see." When he arrived, she led him to a small office where a new project proposal sat on her desk, 10 more schools requesting to join the Morning Table Network, funded by private donors, inspired by PS 142's success. "You've started a chain reaction," Maria said, smiling. "This is your legacy." Miles looked at the papers, then at the window where sunlight poured across the room. "Legacy's a big word," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to keep a promise." That evening, he stopped by the Reyes home one more time. The twins were in the living room reading aloud from a children's book about kindness, their voices overlapping in a sing-song rhythm. Elena was in the kitchen, stirring soup, humming softly. The little apartment, once cold and dim, now glowed with the kind of warmth that only comes from hard-won peace. He sat with the girls as they read, laughing at their playful debates about who pronounced the words better. "You sound like teachers already," he teased. "We're going to be," Nia said proudly, "like Grandma, and like you added, Noah, you teach people to care." He felt his throat tighten. "Maybe we all teach each other," he said. After dinner, the twins insisted on showing him their new art wall, a space filled with drawings, notes, and poems. One small page near the bottom caught his attention. It read, "When you share kindness, it comes back like sunshine after rain." Beneath it were two signatures, Noa and Nia. Later, as he stood outside, Elena joined him on the porch. The night was cool, the city lights stretching endlessly down Sterling Place. "They adore you, you know," she said. "You've given them more than food. You've given them safety." He nodded, watching as the twins pressed their faces to the window, waving at him. "They gave me something too," he said. "They reminded me what my mother meant when she said the best investments aren't financial, they're human." Elena smiled. "She must have been proud of you." "I hope so," he said. As he walked back to his car, he unfolded the drawing again under the streetlight. The colors glowed, even in the dimness, alive with the spirit of the children who'd made it. A full heart starts with a full table. He thought about the chain of moments that had led here, an empty lunchbox, a quiet decision, a mother's lesson echoing years later. He had come searching for purpose, and somewhere between the cafeteria and this little house on Sterling Place he had found it. In the distance, laughter carried from an open window. It was the same sound that had first caught his attention a year ago, but now it was different. It wasn't the laughter of children pretending to be okay. It was the laughter of children who were. Miles looked up at the Brooklyn sky, a soft smile forming. The city hummed alive with stories he would never fully know. But this one, this small miracle of ordinary people and extraordinary love, would stay with him forever. A year after that rainy day at A142, the story of Miles Harrington had come full circle. What began as a single encounter with two hungry children had become a quiet revolution. The morning table program had spread beyond Brooklyn 10 schools, then 20, then more, each one serving not just food, but hope. The twins, Noa and Nia Reyes, once isolated and silent, were now thriving students known for their kindness as much as their bright smiles. Their mother, Elena, stood on her own feet again, proud and unafraid of tomorrow. And Miles, once a billionaire searching for meaning, had finally found it in the laughter of children who no longer had to pretend they weren't hungry. He never sought attention or fame. In fact, his greatest accomplishment was that most people never knew his name. But the evidence of his compassion lived on in every breakfast served, in every full stomach, in every teacher who saw energy instead of fatigue in a child's eyes. Miles had built something that outlived applause, a system of care rooted in respect. He had learned that real wealth was never about accumulation, it was about circulation. What you give away freely comes back multiplied in the form of trust, connection, and purpose. As he walked through the school one last time, watching the twins help set the breakfast tables, he realized that he didn't need to stay anymore. The work belonged to the people. Now, the parents, the teachers, the children who had made this program their own. He carried with him one last gift, the drawing the twins had made, the one that said, "A full heart starts with a full table." That sentence was no longer a child's doodle. It had become a truth he'd built his life around. One act of kindness can ripple farther than you can imagine. You don't need wealth to make an impact, you need willingness. Miles didn't change the world overnight. He changed one morning, one table, one life at a time. And in doing so, he reminded us that compassion doesn't just feed others, it fills us too. In a time when so many feel disconnected or helpless, Miles' journey reminds us that the smallest, most consistent acts of goodness can rebuild trust and heal communities. So, ask yourself, what empty lunchbox moment could you respond to today? Who around you might need the kind of help that doesn't make noise but makes a difference? If this story moved you, If it reminded you of the power of empathy, then be part of the change. Subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and share this video because every view, every share, every story told keeps the current of kindness alive. Your support gives us the strength to keep creating stories that inspire hope, compassion, and the belief that one person truly can make a difference.